kindness, I think, is kind of harder. Because kindness and niceness kind of get bundled up together, don't they? We talk about people who are nice, and kind might be a word that gets chucked in there, but niceness is about not upsetting people. And sometimes, to be kind to yourself and to other people, you do have to draw a line and say, actually, that's not okay. It wouldn't be kind if I let you continue treating that person badly. It wouldn't be kind to them, and it actually wouldn't be kind to you to leave you behaving in that way. It wouldn't be kind to me to continue being in a situation in which I'm allowing you to treat me badly. Kindness has a harder edge to it. Loving kindness doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means saying, hey, look, this is hard, but we're going to treat that person as a whole person, just the way they are. And we're going to ask that person to treat you as a whole person, just the way you are. And it means sometimes that kids interrupt our worship because they're whole people just the way that they are. Yes, I know, baby. Because they're whole people just the way that they are, and they're not less valuable than the rest of us. And what they have to offer, even if it's slightly chewed pasta, is not less valuable than anybody else's contribution. And then we come to walking in humility. That is not a word our society is terribly fond of. Humility is not a glamorous virtue. But again, it's because we've got kind of doormat tendencies written all over humility. We think that being humble means letting other people behave badly. It doesn't mean that. I wonder if walking humbly with God is about, to borrow a phrase from the movement for the well-being of the earth, to tread lightly on the earth. To recognise that there is goodness in the air and the sea and the land all around us, and that we shouldn't just exploit it for what we can gain from it. To walk lightly on the earth. To walk lightly with the people around us, to recognise that they are full of goodness and wonder, and that they shouldn't be exploited for what we can gain from them. To walk humbly doesn't mean to put ourselves down, but to lift others up. To say, I recognise the goodness and the wonder of these people around me, and this good earth around me. Jesus is having a row with religious leaders of his day, those of us who are religious leaders in the room, and there are a handful tonight, beyond the pastoral leaders of the gathering. Always nice to remember that Jesus saves his choicest words for religious leaders, and that that's us now, so always good to read those words with care and with caution. Jesus is having an argument with the religious leaders of his day, and they are trying to trick him. It never works. They keep trying. God bless their hearts. They keep trying. It doesn't work. And so they're trying to figure out whether Jesus knows his Bible very well, and Jesus has got this funny little smile on his face in my envisioning of this story. And they say, go on then. Which of this large book of rules is the most important rule? Jesus says to them, the most important commandment, the greatest commandment is this, that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is a distillation, a filtering through of very many rules. And it's a fascinating distillation, because what Jesus does is say, love is a thing that takes all of you to do. You don't just do it with your heart, though you have to do it with your heart. You don't just do it with your soul, though you have to do it with your soul. And you don't just do it with your mind, though you do have to do it with your mind. If you truly love someone, it is all of you. You are all in. It is your emotional side and your rational side coming together with the spiritual side of you to say, all that I am loves this person. Jesus says the most important commandment, the greatest commandment, is to love God with everything that you are. And the second commandment is like it. We skip over that part. If you ask someone who knows their Bible to tell you what the greatest commandment is, they'll go, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, soul, your mind, your strength, and love your neighbour as yourself, the end. And they'll have had most of the point. But the point is, the second commandment is like the first. Jesus elevates our love for one another to being like our love for God, not less important. It is like it. It is the same. That it must be done with all our hearts and all our souls and all our minds and with all our strength in other translations, if those are the ones you're familiar with. But also to say that love that you learn in your relationship with God mustn't stay in your relationship with God. It must ripple out into the way that you live with other people. It is like, the two commandments are alike. You can't pull them apart. Can't say, well, I love God, but people are terrible. Because if we love God and hate that which God has made, we're not really faithfully loving the one who made them. I think that there are really three. It's either one commandment or three. The second is like it, but the second is reflexive. We love our neighbours as we love ourselves. And every year, as we go through Pride season, I have conversations with people who tell me that someone who looked like me, and they actually don't mean look like me, they mean more one of these, told them that they shouldn't love themselves. And it breaks my heart. But every year they tell me, and so every year I faithfully turn up to hear it. And in my own small way to try and say, but I believe that God really does want you to love yourself. To love your neighbour and to not love yourself is only half the work. It's not a competition. We're not saying make your neighbour more important and yourself less important. We're saying, hey, have a really good sense of how impressive and special you are, and then remember that everyone else is just as impressive and special as you. Love your neighbour as yourself. Wish for them all the good you wish for yourself. The freedom, the justice, the kindness that you want for yourself. Want that for your neighbour. It's not about tearing ourselves down. It's about building one another up. That's why it's like the commandment to love God. Because there's no shadow side to love for God. And there should be no shadow side to love for neighbour and self. And Jesus says to the people who tried to test him and got it wrong, on those two commandments hangs everything else in the Bible. If anyone ever asks you why you think this is the most important bit, Jesus thinks it's the most important bit, you're welcome. On these two commandments hang all of the law and all of the prophets. Everything else comes back to this. Love God, love your neighbour, love yourself. Love is the same. The commandments are the same. And everything else has to hang off them. If your love means that you've got to hate somebody, it's gone wrong somewhere. If someone tells you that they love you so much that they kind of need you to hate yourself, their love has gone wrong somewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a terrible person. They might be, I don't know them, they might be or they might not be. But their love has gone wrong somewhere. Because love is what it all hangs off. When we do justice, it's because we love people and we think that justice and fairness and equality are the right answer. When we love kindness, it's because we love people and we think kindness is the right way to live with people that we care about. When we walk humbly with God and one another and nature, because we love them and we recognise that walking gently on the earth and being kind and responsible to the people around us is what love looks like in practice. So if we circle back around to what can I do to please God, it's not some grand declaration, it's not a magic prayer or word, and it's not some big expensive sacrifice of oil or wine or whatever else it might be. Love is what we do. If we want to please God, love is what we do. We love God and we love one another and we love ourselves, and we recognise that goodness is at the heart of all of that. And if we do that, and we really let that change our lives, then the rest is noise. I'm going to give us a few things to do during this next time. There will be discussion groups. If that doesn't feel comfortable for you, you absolutely do not need to be involved in a discussion group, but you're all welcome to be involved in discussion groups. There are also, on top of the piano, there are flags, a trans flag and a non-binary flag, with messages of support that people wanted to write that they are proud of particular people in their life. If it will help you to come and read about that love and pride that is spilling out for our community, you're so welcome to do that. On the glass wall at the back are a whole load of post-it notes that people have been writing for us faithfully across Pride season as we meet them, in answer to the question, can you be LGBTQ+ and a Christian? There are a couple of no's. Be warned as you read them that there just are a handful of people for whom the pain is too much and they're not sure that you can pull these bits of their life back together again. But the vast majority say some form of yes, and I think those stories are also worth reading. There are some origami hearts on the table. If you want to pray for something or you want us to pray for something, please feel free to write something on the origami heart and put them with the pile of prayers on the floor on the other side of the altar. And when we come back together, we pray those prayers. So looking at us, I'm going to suggest that we have 4. Ooh, okay. 5. Lovely, that's perfect. So we're going to be 5 groups. These are the questions. If you've not been to the gathering before, this is a jumping off point for your discussions. Some groups will stick to them, other groups will use them very much as some idea of something they might like to talk about. Some will pick one that they fancy and we'll talk about that one for the entire time. Please don't feel that you have to do them, they're not a test, and nobody's going to check your answers afterwards. It's just about how we engage together. G is going to have a group with him at the front here. Nikki, will you stay where you are and have a group at the back there? Hannah and G, will you keep a group with